Hi, you're listening to Boggy Talk, Faith Conversations in the Mud, a resource of Church on Bayshore. Boggy Talk is recorded on Boggy Bayou in Niceville, Florida, and is hosted by Justin Wyatt and James Ross, pastors at Church on Bayshore. We typically want every matter of faith and life to have crystal clear answers, but it isn't always that easy. This podcast digs in to help Christians think with a kingdom mentality about topics that sometimes get muddy and bog us down. So let's dive in.
Hey, and welcome to Boggy Talk. We are so thankful you have joined us for this exciting edition of Boggy Talk, continuing in our series Issues Facing Generation Z. And what's exciting is that we have a real live Generation Z member in the room.
We do.
So over here is James Ross, who is not Generation Z. He is not the special guest. He's the regular old guy who's here all the time. Not
we
old.
went from faithful to regular old guy.
That's right. Regular, regular old. That's the new way of saying faithful. And we are also joined.
That's what I'm going to say about our legacy members of our church instead of faithful and legacy. Our regular
old folks.
They'll love that.
They will love that.
Yeah.
Well, we are also joined by a really cool guy, Alec Ammons, who is our student ministry director. Yeah. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here. This is great.
You have a great name, Alec Ammons. That's just like
alliteration.
Alec and Ashley Ammons.
Yes. 4 A's.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
what's your middle name, Alec?
James.
Oh,
hey, there we go.
Wow. What a good.
I'm gonna start calling you AJ.
AJ.
Do it.
AJ.
Yeah.
What's
AJ.
up? Yeah, that could be a good nickname. What's your nickname? People call you
Jimbo.
Jimbo.
My wife calls me Jimbo. My sister-in-law
Well, how did that
calls me
start?
Jimbo. When I was a kid, somebody called me Jimbo. And they finally found out that my mom called me Jimbo when I was a kid. And so my wife and sister-in-law specifically jumped upon
really
that.
Funny.
So,
I did not
Jimbo.
know this.
I don't think Amy listens to this, but I'm a little bitter.
Yeah. All right, Jimbo.
Yeah.
That's funny. What
about you? Yeah. J-Dub?
My dad calls me
J-Dub.
JC, and J-Dub is what's funny is my oldest Josiah, his initials JW, so he wants to be J-Dub.
Oh, I'm bringing that in.
I'm like, no, buddy,
let's do it.
I'm the OG J-Dub.
So
I told him he can't have it. He's got to find his own nickname.
He's much cooler than
J-Dub Jr.
So.
That's right.
J-Dub Jr.
He will hate that.
J-Dub Jr.
He will hate that. Well, we're thankful that you are here today and representing Generation Z and wearing the Bayshore student shirt. I am wearing a Bayshore Kids shirt because I believe that children are the future.
And I'm wearing an Under Armour shirt because I like to golf every once in a while.
That's right. Well,
you got fancy with the collar shirt.
I'm representing Boomer shirt.
That's a very Jimbo shirt.
Yeah.
It is a very Jimbo shirt.
If I were to meet a guy named Jimbo, I'd be like, I bet you're wearing a shirt like that. Oh, well, we are talking today about Generation Z and technology. Yeah. And the reason we brought you in is because we are already ancient.
Yes.
And we can't operate the TV, the remote anymore.
It's the power button.
It's so hard to find.
We watch TV with the audio and not closed caption.
Right. Yeah. That's very, very old school, James. Very old school.
Man, when you think about our kids growing up technology and the technology that we grew up with, playing the Oregon Trail on a Apple IIe DOS computer.
So he's in his 40s. He's in his 40s, so he speaks for himself. I'm
That's
not that
right.
old.
Right. Yes, I'm so much older. So much older. So what we do want to talk about is this today is just this is an issue facing Generation Z. Our generation grew up really without a lot of technology in our childhood, and then adapted technology later on, early high school, college years, early adult years. But your generation and younger, you were the elder Generation Z in terms of the age bracket.
You're a zillennial, right?
Yes, I'm a zillennial.
You're a little subgroup.
I'm right on the line between millennial and Gen Z.
But you are Gen Z.
But I am Gen Z.
And Ashley's a millennial.
Yes.
You guys are from a different
generation.
Wow.
8 months apart.
8 months apart, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Christy's 8 months older than me.
Oh, wow.
Wow. But we're the same generation. So
yeah. We different generations. We don't. Communication is
it's probably really hard for you.
Yeah.
8 months can make a lot of difference.
It does,
we want you to just, especially as we talk about technology, we're really going to focus in on social media and connectivity for Generation Z, because this is really the new way to connect for them. It's natural to them. And to you, I say to them, like it's this abstract people group out there.
Yeah.
But it's you.
It is me.
This is you. So, Alec, you tell us about you.
About me, yeah. I feel like a lab rat almost. Like
you represent all of Generation Z right now, so don't mess it up.
They're not a hologram. Generation Z are not.
We are real.
You're real. You are the real
food.
the real thing. So, and also, I mean, you preached recently.
Prod? Did you say prod?
I was making fun. I was saying silly. You preached because that sounds funny.
Yeah.
Graduation Sunday, and so that was exciting.
Good job, Alex.
That was awesome.
Got to hear you. It's Memorial Day weekend, so a lot of people may have missed because
it's online.
They're not old faithful.
They're not old
so it is
members.
online. So listen to that. So we're excited just for what's going on. So we wanted you to help us understand. Generation Z, social media. So tell us this. What's really going on social media? Like, what are students getting into?
Yeah, who's their top 10 on MySpace? Tell us about
top 10.
MySpace.
I didn't even have a MySpace.
Okay.
That's how far removed I am from that. That's crazy.
Yes.
What's going on in technology or in social media right now? I mean, it's a lot of trends. It's nothing new, but it's just a new way to experience trends. And a lot of what Gen Z, I guess, a lot of what my generation is into is creating their own kind of brand. So social media is, as much as it is connectivity, it's also branding themselves like a business does. So being on trend is super important, making sure that you're up to date. If you're not, you get the OK Boomer or some other, whatever the new thing is, because you're not on trend. So the trends change so much that I don't know what the current trend is, because it's constantly changing and adapting. And as social media platforms change and adapt, the trends change and adapt. Like TikTok has blown up because of their amazing ad campaigns. And Instagram just copied that. And now you have two competing things that are using the exact same platform or the exact same method to promote trends.
Yeah. And there's a lot of adults who recently gotten on TikTok, which means it's not going to be popular for students much longer.
Right? Like
as soon as as soon as older people got on, they're like, we're done with that and move on.
Yeah, I think your wife actually said she only uses Facebook so her grandma can stay in touch with her life.
See pictures. Yep, that's true.
True. So I want to go back to what you just said, because I was reading an article that talked about Generation Z, influence of social media, basically how they see themselves as a brand.
Yeah.
And I think people may not fully understand what that means. Can you explain that? I mean, you've actually done graphic design and branding work before, so that helps you kind of explain that to those eager listeners who have no clue what you mean.
Basically what it is, just like I almost said Blockbuster, which isn't around anymore. I don't know why that's what I jumped to, but
there's one in Oregon.
There's one Blockbuster still?
Yeah,
oh my
god, documentary.
Well, that Blockbuster has great branding. It's really just like any business that you would see. We can talk about Chick-fil-A. They brand themselves as being very polite, being great service, great food. And it's their brand. It's what you know them specifically by. And so what Gen Z age people are trying to do is create something that people know them by on an online platform. And that's just easily recognizable. And you'll see that with a lot of the influencers. They are very on brand. They stick to doing the same things because they know that it's going to get the likes. And then because of creative funds through TikTok and Instagram, they can start to make money if their brand is good enough. And so I think a big thing for a lot of teenagers, a lot of Gen Z, is they see people on social media who can make money doing it. And they think that if their brand is good enough, if they can build a good enough base of people who support what they're doing and what they stand for, then they will ultimately be able to start making money off of it. There's a guy who works at Subway. His parents own the Subway, and he started doing TikToks of him making sandwiches.
Sorry,
no.
That's how ridiculous this is, right?
He makes sandwiches and answers questions about Subway. and Subway has signed him on a multi-million-dollar ad deal. Not multi-million dollars, but
in the wrong industry, man.
right. I should start making sandwiches. Firehouse, if you're listening,
coming for
I'm
you.
in. But he literally just has a camera strapped to his chest.
Yeah.
He makes sandwiches, and then he edits the videos and posts them with a voiceover. And he makes money doing that.
It's interesting because I think like the root of that has always been the same, like, you know, but the discovery is more like you have to push yourself now to be discovered versus you kind of had to wait to be discovered a little more. And that's kind of over time in American history changed to where the field's playing field's level. But it seems like now more than ever, like you feel this responsibility. Like if I'm going to be discovered, I'm going to make my mark. I've got to take initiative to do that. Where before you had the guy who just like, you know, ate at Subway and lost weight, and he was, well, I guess it didn't work out well for him in his life, so I probably shouldn't have referenced him. Yeah, never mind. Move on. Move on.
But we don't. I think too that pressure, like the branding pressure. Like if you're a company branding, you're constantly looking for the next innovative thing that's going to engage your customer base, and so I think that what you're saying really points to a huge danger that we need to be aware of. I mean, for ourselves as well. You know, if as adults engaging in social media, especially for our kids, for students, is that when they start seeing themselves as a brand, it's ultimately this like, I want likes, and you always have to push the envelope a little bit further to keep that engagement going. And so, you know, I saw an article recently. It was talking about how influencers right now are exhausted of having to entertain people. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
So sorry you made a sandwich.
It's very Gen X of me, like, wah, 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 grow up, get a job. You know, like that's like, but it's like, that's because they're constantly having to push the envelope. And I think what it really sets people up for is this duplicity where you are presenting your brand and inwardly your character, your identity it's far removed. And I think of, you know, my kids love to watch Dude Perfect. They love to watch Mr. Beast, and it's all about branding. Like you don't actually know these people and their character, but it's this exciting brand for kids, for students to watch. And I, read, Mr. Beast is now being accused of basically having a terrible work culture and abusing his employees. You would never guess that. Why? It looks like he's the most fun person to be around online because that's his brand. And I think for our kids who are engaging, for students who are engaging, there's that temptation. Like I need to present myself. And I think in a spiritual way, kids, students, we're going to try to like, I want people to think that I'm farther along than I am, more spiritual than I am, even and present that. So that leads us into this next question. We talked about this. Next week we were talking about mental health and how that's a huge factor, social media and technology. So, what relationship do you see amongst your peers and with students as you're leading our students in this church and you're very engaged with students? What do you see? What correlation do you see there? How do you see all this impacting mental health?
I think that it's almost a one-to-one correlation. Just like you were just saying about their identity being, basically they've got two identities. They've got a personal life and they have their social media life. It leads to a lot of mental health. The biggest thing, especially among young ladies and Gen Z girls, is comparison. And that's such a hard thing because it's a constant thing. They are constantly scrolling through and targeted ads and targeted posts for people that age are a lot of other girls that age. There's so much, a lot of the influencers are they wear a certain type of clothing and they act and dance a certain way. And so there's a lot of not only peer pressure to do that, but also if I do not do those things, if I don't dress this way, if I don't talk this way, if I don't act this way, if I don't drink that Starbucks drink, then I am not as valuable. And so, especially for our young ladies, that's where it gets really hard. And comparison leads to anxiety, and it just kind of spirals from there because their identity isn't found in truth. It's found in what they see on social media. And because we were just talking about trends, they're never going to meet that identity.
It's going to change.
It's going to constantly be changing, and it's like a rat race. You're constantly having to figure it out. I'd say for our guys, mental health comes from kind of the same thing almost. it's targeted ads of ladies wearing a certain type of clothing, dancing a certain type of way, and leading our young men into horrible temptation. And
It's so accessible now.
Oh, it is. It is
accessible.
Completely. Any platform that they're on, it is completely accessible. And really, I think the biggest thing, and we're gonna talk about parents in a minute, but I'm gonna touch on it a little bit here. Is even this, like, there are students that are smarter than me with technology. They know so much more than I do, and so because they're so cutting edge when it comes to technology, a lot of the things that we want to put in place for our students, they know every workaround, and they can get by it. And so it comes back to teaching truth and being very bold. Like, students and Gen Z, they just want what's true. They don't want to beat around the bush. It doesn't have to be fun and catchy. They want truth. And so that comes like when I'm teaching on a Wednesday night, it's what can I tell them about who they are in Christ and what their value is, so much more than they see on social media through technology.
That's good. You actually did that like a few Wednesdays ago, I think. My kids came home to talk about it. They were, maybe you. I think Ashley.
I think it was Ashley. Yeah,
they're actually. Oh, she's way better.
yeah, she is. She's generations older than me, and
it's the 8 months of wisdom she's got on.
8 months. Yeah, those first 8 months alone.
I mean, I appreciate you guys. You know, my kids. Oldest is 13, about to be 14, and doesn't have social media yet, because even though he begs for it, and all of his friends do, and that's for us. I don't judge anybody else who's allowed, but for us, we're like, you're just not ready for it. James does judge it. But I think it's like, we're just not, and it's hard for him to understand. And I'm just like, dude, you just have to trust me, like where you are. And it's not you, but it's like where you are as a 13-year-old teenager. Like, that is just something you don't need to be dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it's not as much to protect his quote unquote innocence, because everything's accessible. It's really to help him. I really want his identity, to be formed as much as possible. We're never done being settled in that. Even as we get older, like, we're still figuring that out. But, man, so much has happened in a teenage brain that I was like, that's one thing we can just say, hard no to right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, and just drama on social media, just the connectivity of social media, and even just just phones. You're just so much more connected to drama, and it's why we don't take phones to camp, because at midnight, when we're all supposed to be asleep, you have groups texting each other, and it just leads to drama. And it's just, it's another unnecessary step that a teenager already has to go through. Like, I had a cell phone in high school, but I don't know if y'all did.
They actually weren't a thing.
Yeah, so y'all didn't.
People had beepers.
Y'all had drama in high school, though, right?
Didn't have beepers. People would like.
And we were like, oh, they must be a drug dealer. Yeah. That's like what people thought.
But you also had drama in high school, though.
Absolutely.
And so imagine that heightened, because you can get it 24/7.
Yeah, you can't withdraw.
Yeah, there's no withdrawal.
Natural rhythms of, like, life is hard. I mean, it is. It has always been. Like, you're like, I want to go back to the old days when people died of syphilis and everything at 40 years old. Well, that's a sexual, I don't know. They died of syphilis, but I don't know.
How about
tuberculosis?
Oregon Trail, dysentery.
Yeah, there we go. Typhoid.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, what Oregon Trail were you on? Anyway, but so life was hard, but I think there's these rhythms when we can withdraw from the drama. I mean, as a pastor, like, your life ministry is tough. And so if you're just always connected and always in it, like, you're just not wired. Yeah. You're not strong enough. And I think that a lot of our younger people, like, don't see that, and they're not even able to withdraw if nobody's helping them to see that. And specifically the ones that don't come from stronger families who are more intentional about this, like, they're not validated at home, so they're looking for validation even more. And I mean, The Social Dilemma was a very eye-opening documentary, and it didn't even get in this fully. Like, they're a product, and they began to operate transactionally with people too, and it's just, that's devaluing of themselves and of other people who are created in the image of God. And so it's dangerous. You know? And I'm not trying to be like scary, spooky, like, but that's why I said I do judge. Like, there is no way in my mind that a 13-year-old should be on social media regularly. I mean, there's just no way. Yeah. And I'd be happy if you want to talk to me about that. Let's talk.
Well, I think about
I'll win the argument.
It's for my own self. It's like, I have to set boundaries for myself as a grown man, like, as I'm just a grown man, an adult, women have to do the same thing. So it's like, I have to, so how 13-year-olds, 14 are not naturally good with setting boundaries.
It's why you don't drink when you're 13, right?
And so it's like, this is a boundary we have to put in place for our kids.
Yeah.
And, what you're about to say. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No,
you're the
good.
guest.
You're good, because you're touching on exactly what I was about to say is we a lot of times hand 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, sometimes younger than that, a rectangle that has the entire world's information on it.
Right.
Which is so much more than they can handle. And it has so much more information than they really need at that age. With, like we talked about earlier, almost unlimited access to anything that they can find. And then the flip side of that is you're also giving people unlimited access to kids. And there's the danger of that, and we know that danger, but we don't always see that danger. I mean, even you think about, I'm going to go back to my Subway guy. You think about that, like
your Subway guy's safer than mine.
A little bit. Our Subway guy's better.
For now.
Yeah, for now. Yeah, he'll get that Subway. It'll go way downhill. But he has an influence. Like, he talks to you as a direct voice into kids' life, and we have to understand that everything that they see on social media is someone else with an influence in their life, giving them information that more often than not probably isn't accurate. And that's what you'll see, like, a lot of young people will argue, like, but it helps me learn, it helps me grow because I'm learning so much. But but where's that coming from? Where is that learning coming from? And who's pouring into your kid? Who's pouring into your student who you don't know? Like, you don't know their background. Subway guy, you don't know what they're doing in behind closed doors, because it is that double standard life where you can be something, you can be something completely else.
So I think, most parents think that they have a pretty good handle on their teenagers and technology. And I think most parents probably don't have as good a handle as they think they do, myself included. Like, there's probably things that I think I've got a good handle on it, but I may not. So, and we also, you touched on this, like, teenagers can be real slick and they can get around, they can find a workaround. So what would you say are some helpful guidelines for parents in understanding their teens and technology?
Yeah, I think there's apps and websites that you can pay for to help monitor that. But again, they're great and they work. But as they aren't as up to the times as a lot of times kids and students are. So we have to do more than that. I think it's a great first step. Those apps and websites can be really helpful as an initial barricade. I think the best way, though, and this is a really simple way, more often than not, unless your teenager is just really, really good and has like 8 jobs, you're probably paying for your kid's phone.
Yep.
You should have unlimited access to that phone, because they will hide things and all kinds of, you should know every app. You should be constantly checking text messages. They will delete them, read the text messages. It's just something you can look and you should know every aspect of your phone. Because again, it's unlimited access to a big and scary world that wants something. Like you said, they act transactionally. They're not just for entertainment. They're here to take something from or teach something. And there's just so much influence that can be so negative. And I really think that is the only, it's still not going to be 100% effective because of how smart students are and how smart kids are. But we really have to open up, and I say this, I don't have kids, but parents should be opening up their student's phone. And there's this whole like, but it's mine. My privacy. It's like, I paid for it, so it's fine. Like that's what my parents, when I got a Facebook because I wanted to play Farmville when I was in high school. And
Just to know, so that's like grandma stuff.
Oh yeah,
I
well,
never played Farmville.
If you scroll deep enough into the Facebook that I deleted because I needed a new one, it's just like I need a reindeer. I need a reindeer. I need a
grandma
reindeer.
gave you one.
Oh yeah, every time I needed a reindeer,
I know nothing about what
grandma
you're talking about.
stepped up and gave me a reindeer. But I forgot what I was saying. But
ran over her.
Yeah, there we go.
The reindeer.
Yeah, nice reference there. And you have to sing it too.
Yeah.
Grandma got ran over by a reindeer. My kids love that song.
It's great. It's a good movie too.
So terrible that
There's a movie.
There's a
called
movie
Grandma.
called
movie.
Yeah.
No way. Does it have Ernest in it? It sounds like Ernest.
It's an animated movie. It's like a
okay.
Scooby-Doo animated movie,
terrible.
and Grandma gets hit by.
Is that on TikTok or is that like
That I doubt any of our students know that movie.
Oh,
That
okay.
was like
Sounds like
elementary
claymation,
school. Yeah.
Well, you're saying, and I appreciate your challenge to the parents that like, hey, specifically if you're paying for these things, like you have the right to them. And I think that, parents have really got to sort through their own insecurities and like, you can't, I mean, we see it in the travel sports culture and all that here. Like so many of our parents, like they're getting their validation. They're getting their validation by how their children do, and they want their children to accept them. And, I want a great relationship with my children, but I do have to remember, like, I'm their protector.
Yeah.
And there have been things in our house, where we're not as open to some of that as, some of our other parents are, where our children are like, well, we want to do this or so and so. And I literally say, when you are 18 years old, those are decisions that you will make for yourself. But it is my job to protect you. God has trusted me to watch over you. And as long as you're, in my house, this is how it's going to be. And, I'm not saying they're like, oh, amen, brother,
I get it now.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks for the.
But I do think that has always been, they get that I view, whether they agree with me or not, they definitely know where I'm coming from. And I think that as parents, we have to help our children see where we're coming from. Yeah. And I think they'll be thankful. And you know what? We might be being too overprotective. We might be making mistakes in that because we're going to. Right. But I think what matters the most of our children is that they know there are these people who do not see them as a transaction. Right. That they see them as, hey, we love you and we're here for your good. Yeah. And so especially when they face adulthood and are figuring that out, to know they have a mom or dad that view them that way is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, part of it is helping our kids as they mature, it's, as they're like the analogy of a kid learning to ride a bike, like most kids use training wheels. And then if you take the training wheels off, depending on the age, like most parents are going to walk beside them and help them until they're able to ride a bike on their own. And really with technology, that's kind of the end goal is that it's inevitable that our kids are going to use technology. Be a part of it. It's going to be a part of their lives. And so we want to lead them to where they can engage with it healthfully. And we don't do that by just saying, here it is, go figure it out. Like it's a scaffolding, as they mature and grow. That's an education word. There's the scaffolding that we're providing. And then as a parent,
that's actually a construction word.
How I'm using it, that's true. It is used in construction. But it's like you're providing this framework, and then as you're teaching them how to use it, you're slowly removing the framework so they are independent. And so I want to ask that. So what are some things that maybe your parents did that helped you navigate this? Or, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've met your parents, and they seem like fantastic people and good parents. I mean, you turned out okay, so
that's fair.
Mostly, somewhat. We're all still growing.
Exactly.
And I think maybe you're mature enough to do this and have say, what are some even things that you wish your parents would have done differently or helped you a little bit more? I think that would be really helpful for us to understand as we're navigating this.
Yeah, definitely. First off, hey mom. And then,
she's going to share this.
Yeah, she is.
Depending on
for
what
sure.
you say.
Well, she's not on social media, so she won't.
Good for you.
Yeah, there you go, mom. I don't know how you're going to watch this, but the first thing that I would say is they had access to my accounts. One of the rules when I got my Farmville Facebook was that I had to follow my parents and they had to follow me. And it was like this reminder, and I wasn't posting anything other than I need a reindeer, but it was a constant reminder to me that my parents are looking at what I'm posting. And I can't escape that because he didn't have any other friends on Facebook. My dad would just look at my posts and look at my brother's posts. And then the other thing is they set the really great example, and they actually intentionally moved to houses that gave me the opportunity to disconnect. And I was growing up kind of at the beginning of all of this. So Facebook was really the trend, and Twitter had just kind of started to be a thing. But they put me in situations that I could disconnect. They gave me outlets. Fortunately, I had two brothers, so I always had two fight playmates. But they moved into neighborhoods that they knew other kids my age would be in, that I could connect with outside of the screens. And I think they were okay, and times change. But when I was growing up, I was a streetlight kid. When the streetlights came on, I had about 15 minutes left. And that really made a huge difference, because I was able to disconnect. It was like what we were talking about earlier. Providing those opportunities to disconnect were so important that my parents did. I think also I knew that they paid for my phone. They really reminded of me of that often. Anytime I was acting, well, I'm just going to take your phone because I own it. And that was a great incentive to keep things on the up and up. And I think that it worked. And I think the other thing that I wish that my parents had done was stayed more connected with what was on trend. That's hard to do because it requires a lot of work. There's great articles, and there's a ton of resources online that can help you stay up to date on what's going on. I'll give you one real quick. Recently, in the last year, TikTok had a trend, and I can't remember what it was called, so forgive me. But
it's so trendy.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's already
very
old.
It's very trendy.
It's so old.
I don't even remember what it was because I'm just like so up on it now.
But it was basically showing people how to shoplift. And it was just like here exactly. And it was like, and they called it I think it was like #borrowing. And it was literally just like, here's the process if you want something but can't pay for it. And I think there's a lot of things that even as I was growing up that I don't think my parents missed, but if they had been more attached and more a part of the cultural trends and changes and what's going on, and I think that would have come just from conversation with me, like, hey, what's going on social media? And that your kids will hate that, but it's important to know what's going on. I think if they had done that, there would have been some things that I wouldn't have fallen into. I wouldn't have wasted a lot of time on. And it helped develop healthy habits of, hey, that's a fun trend, but let's do this. And again, providing those outlets to step away from social media. Yeah. But I think engaging in conversation about what's happening on social media, being their friends and on social media and seeing what they're seeing and then taking their phones and literally scrolling through what they're seeing. And I think for a lot of our young guys, that's a huge thing that parents can help with is see what they're looking at. Because if they know that you can see it, then I think it's just another tool that you can use to help mitigate that some.
That's good. So as a young guy, like what about you personally right now? How do you, what boundaries do you have in place for yourself?
Yeah, I really try to limit screen time, just because, I have a wife. I'm trying to spend face-to-face time with her. We're about to get a dog, so I want to spend face-to-face time with my dog soon. And I want to be engaged with what we're happening. One of the things that I try and do, I'm not great at it all the time, is have a one-screen limit. It's really easy if I'm working on my laptop to also have my phone playing a TV show while there's like nature sounds on our actual TV. And so I try to set like a one screen limit. So I'm only engaging in one thing at a time. And I think that's really good when it's a movie night and everybody should be engaged in this one thing.
That's hard for me because I'm like, at this stage of life, we're watching movies and I'm like, with our kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, how much longer? Yeah. But it's important that I'm modeling that.
Yeah.
If I have a one screen limit, I fall asleep. You can ask my kids about that sometime how movie night goes with dad.
That's good, but that's modeling. That's modeling engagement.
As a parent. And especially as social media, there's so many things to connect with. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. For some, there's probably something else that I don't know about yet. Snapchat. There's all kinds of things that are going on, and so teaching your kids to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
Not only will it help their concentration levels, but it'll help focus on one thing. I also just have boundaries with where I take my phone. I don't know if we're going to get into some bathroom talk real quick, but like if your student is spending a long time pooping, like it's because they're on their phone. Is that the first time somebody said pooping on Boggy Talk?
It might be.
not the worst, though.
we've had parenting talks.
Okay,
I'm sure it happened then. It's
Good.
diapers,
But your students are taking their phones into the bathroom. One, they can be isolated in there, which isolation with technology, especially for our young men, is not a good thing. But also there's just some hygiene things that are kind of important with that. but you're teaching them.
What do you mean?
I'm not gonna get into it.
There will be fecal matter on the floor, and we're not speaking.
That's a
figuratively.
school
We're
word.
not speaking figuratively.
But it's teaching habits that they don't have to be attached all the time. Like it's constant connectivity is such a problem, and I struggle with that, especially like email. I'm addicted to email, and which our students are not. I don't think.
They're like, I have 7,000 emails because they have to have an email to sign up for things. And
It's just there needs to be time where you're not disconnected, and I think in the bathroom is a really easy time to not be disconnected or to be disconnected. So
yeah, that right.
Not any less sanitary, but I mean any more sanitary. But having a book in there,
Yeah, I mean it's as long as the book stays in there and you wash your hands, it's probably good.
But yeah, I think what you're hitting on is just it goes back to
sequence.
having boundaries, having clear, like, whether it's bathroom, whether it's not in your bedroom, like it's always in a public area in the house, like it's in the living room, like that's what we have to think through. Like we need to set these guidelines and guardrails so that we're helpful. Yeah,
and I think one thing that parents especially can do is set up like a charging station in your kitchen, in your living room, and that's where all of the phones, even your phone, goes at night to live. Because we need disconnection as well. And to, again, model that for your student of, hey, at the end of the night, it's not by my bed. It's not, that's just another place that, students are losing sleep in major ways because the way that social media is designed is to keep you scrolling and to keep you engaged. If you watch a Social Dilemma, they've got a cool kind of like graphic picture of that, but it's a constant, like you'll get ads like, how did you just like that video that you just watched? And they'll start to cater more things that you want to watch. So you'll get stuck for hours in this scrolling loop, especially at nighttime when you could be going to sleep. And I think students are losing sleep, which affects so much, and mental health plays into that. So having that spot where all phones go, all technology goes at the end of the night is just so important. And especially to model that yourself would be great.
Well, you brought that up a couple of times, and I want to say that, so one of the reasons that we hired you is we really were saying, hey, we want to bring somebody in who is, I was the youngest, ministerial staff member that we had, and we want to go younger than that because we want, Gen Z to have, an influence in what we're doing. And just naturally there'd be a better connection with students as we moved, Michael was promoted. But what I love about you and love then is I in no way, you do have a natural connection because you're close to them age, but you're not trying to be cool to them. You're not even trying to do the same things they're doing. You just want them to know you care about them and you believe God has a plan for them.
Yeah. Right.
And I think as a parent, you're 15 years younger than me or 14 years younger than me, but that shows me if you aren't trying to be cool to my 12-year-old, then I certainly am not cool to my 12-year-old and shouldn't be trying to be cool. And they need me to know, and they need me to model this for them. And I think parents, this would be my challenge to you. If you're always on your phone, you're always distracted, and if your spouse isn't allowed to have full access to your phone, then it's going to be challenging for you to have this kind of relationship with your children. And I think ultimately, as you say all this, I love the illustration you gave of your dad, and it belonged to him. And so he had the rights to it. 1 Corinthians says that our bodies belong to God. Right. And I think this needs to be the appeal to our children. It's as a parent, I'm modeling this for you. I own this, but ultimately, you're God's.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be on pornography, and you shouldn't be obsessed with social media, and you shouldn't be disconnected from the world and the mission and plan God has for you, because what does God want for you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think as Christian parents, like, we've really got to get there in our conversations, preparing them to think like that when they are out of our house.
I think that's great.
One of the things you said too is made me think of how I think teenagers, like, boundaries, though they will not like them, ultimately I think they are a relief for them because they kind of recognize, like, I think about, our oldest does have a phone. It doesn't have social media, but he has a phone, and so he has access. And there was a time when I was like, hey, I just think you're spending too much time, and so here's what we're going to do. And it was like, he was like a little bit ticked first, but like normal behavior. But then he was like, you could just sense he was like relieved, like, oh, like, and I think it's because it goes back to teenagers aren't good naturally at regulating themselves and having, and so we do have to be, it's almost like we have to be, and it's exhausting, especially if you have multiple kids, but you are really like having to be their second brain,
Right.
And it's,
Teenager brain's real.
and it is, it really is. I mean, it really is. And I think we have to like say, like, I need to help them. Like, I've got to be the second brain for them to help them think through this, because the goal is that they are able to one day think through this for themselves. They're just not there yet. That's good. Well, anything else you'd add to all this?
Yeah, I'd add, I'm going to do 4 things, but I'll add 2 things to what you just said. First off, setting those boundaries is really, really important. I'm going to say that. I've said it a bunch. I'm going to say it again. And I'll give you an example. I grew up with a phone through high school. I got my first phone in middle school, but it was like a flip phone. It was not anything.
It was a jitterbug?
I wanted one of those more than I wanted this phone. Yeah. No, it was just like a little type keyboard phone. But I actually didn't get my first smartphone until I was a sophomore in high school. No, a junior in high school. I was the flip phone kid, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so that's a boundary that you can set. You don't have access. Like, you want your kids to be connected. Yeah, you can text people, and I'm going to look through your texts, but yeah, here's this awesome dinosaur flip phone, and then they won't want a phone anymore.
So true.
But I grew up with smart technology, and I had a college professor take us on a retreat and literally forced us to put our phones away for an entire weekend. And throughout the whole process of us getting ready for it, it was like, no, like, how am I going to wake up in the morning? What am I going to do at night? How am I going to survive in the dull moments? We played board games. We engaged with each other.
Connected with humans.
And for an entire semester, I had been sitting with these other peers of mine, one of them being Ashley. I was well connected with her. But we didn't ever get to know each other in the classroom. And then in this one weekend, by the end of the weekend, we wished that we had that from the beginning because we had engaged with peers in things that weren't on social media. And so that disengagement is so important for parents. I forgot what my second thing was. So
probably really profound.
Yeah, it was super profound. But I do have 2 book recommendations that I think are really good. One of them, it's not a Christian book, but it helps kind of expound upon the, I'm so sorry. It's called the Bible. No, it helps expound upon why Gen Z wants to brand themselves. And honestly, it's called Marketing for Gen Z, or Marketing to Gen Z. And it's really great just to get inside their heads a little bit, but also get inside what businesses are thinking about
that's a big deal.
Your kids. And so that's a really good one. And then this one is a Christian book. So I had to have one in there. Yes. It's called Faith for Exiles. It talks about how our students are growing up in a cultural Babylon, and plays that out with social media and technology and connectivity, and what that really means for our students and how they're growing and interacting with their peers, and how we can pour into them as parents and pastors and as a church family, how we can really pour into the next generation. So it's a really good book. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the recommendations, and thank you really for all that you've shared. I've learned some things just hearing from you. And it's
I agree.
Refreshing.
You've learned.
I've learned. I've learned, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for your influence in our church and with our students and families. My own kids. I mean, they love you already, and I appreciate how you are. It is very apparent that you care about them, and that you are trying to engage them and teach them just what it looks like to follow the Lord, to know Him and be His disciple. I appreciate that. I love that when I walk through our student area from around, I'm like, I do see our students, they don't want to be called kids. They are students. I do see them connecting with each other. You know, I think you guys have done a good job. I know Michael did a good job before that, just really kind of say, hey, we want to not engage in our phones right now, like be with people. And that's hard because it's not natural to them anymore.
Yeah.
They naturally want to connect with a screen. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for your influence and role. And we may have scratched the surface on some things and you still have questions. So I know that Alec is available.
Yeah, come on.
Available to talk to parents, available to talk to students.
Yes.
If you feel like you need help talking to your student, he's that guy. He's good
Let's
at
do
it.
AJ is happy to talk.
AJ,
I'm in. Let's go.
AJ, the happy talker. But feel free to reach out. It's alec@churchonbayshore.org. Of course, send us a message if you've got questions. And we are so thankful you have listened or watched, whatever you're doing, to this episode in Boggy Talk. So join us next week as we
Episode Z.
Episode Z
of
the
Generation
end.
Z.
It is the last episode. It is the Z to the series as we really piggyback on some of these issues, talking about Generation Z and mental health. So you don't want to miss that because I think it's just some valuable insight, and really it may raise more questions than answers, but ultimately that's the point of getting stuck in the mud.
That's right.
True.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you'll tune in next time.
Thanks for listening to Boggy Talk. We are so glad you joined in the conversation. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a beat.